Tempo affects every single game of Flesh and Blood, from turn 0 to 0 life, so I've spent the past month and a half researching everything you need to know about tempo in this game. Tempo is the DNA of Flesh and Blood, fueling the back and forth nature that makes the game feel unlike any other trading card game. While tempo might seem like a complex topic, my goal is to break it down so anyone can utilize tempo to win more games of Flesh and Blood. Whether you're brand new to the game or on the World Tour leaderboard, today's video is for you. The word tempo gets thrown around a lot.
Tempo.
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 But what does it even mean? We'll start by defining tempo on both a macro and micro level, giving you concrete examples to get a better grasp on the game's fundamentals. Once you have a solid foundation, we'll cover the game's 3 main tempo classes, so stay tuned to find out which heroes utilize tempo the best in order to pull themselves ahead and push opponents behind. No matter which hero you play, however, I'll wrap up the video showing you how anyone can improve by practicing today's top tempo taking tips. Before we can talk about tempo, this episode was made possible by Codex of Frailty, patrons, and viewers like you. Thank you. Attention, if you or a loved one was impacted by Codex of Frailty, you may be entitled to gem pack compensation. Codex of Frailty is a powerful card linked to loss of tempo in Flesh and Blood. Playing against assassins and rangers in Blitz, Living Legend, or Classic Constructed may have put you at risk. Please don't wait. Visit FabTCG for free articles and information on gem packs. Codex of Frailty victims visit now.
Please note that gem packs are additional support given out at Flesh and Blood Armories. Gem packs may be given out based on participation rather than armory placement. Whether or not you are affected by Codex of Frailty, gem packs are not guaranteed to contain cold foils or marbles.
Before we dive into the nitty-gritty of tempo, we first need to define it. Tempo is a noun, which means the rate of motion or activity. When that activity is Flesh and Blood, tempo specifically means how quickly your hero wants to play the game. For example, Rushdown heroes aim to convert their hand to offense every single turn, ending the game as soon as possible, while mid-range heroes prefer to maximize the overall value of their cards whether they're committed to offense or defense. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, control and setup players prefer slower games to accrue more value over the course of the entire game rather than an individual turn cycle. Tempo is all about timing, but who wins when two heroes playing at drastically different speeds face each other? To answer this question, we'll look at how tempo plays a critical role in the Syndra vs Jarl matchup. While both heroes prefer to play at different speeds, whoever has command over the game's tempo often has the best shot of winning. On a macro level, both heroes try to advance their own win condition while thwarting their opponents. Therefore, both heroes jockey for tempo across turn cycles, trying to shift the pace of the game in their favor. On one hand, Syndra's win condition is to raise her opponent's life total to 0 as fast as possible. Our Draconic Ninja is the beatdown in almost every matchup, utilizing tempo to threaten lethal damage first. Her deck is stacked with red go-again attacks, with an equipment suite dedicated to dealing damage at a faster pace than her opponent's. When combined, these components accelerate Syndra's win condition, reducing her opponent's life total to 0 in under 6 turns when left unchecked. However, tempo isn't just about going fast, as shown by our Elemental Guardian. As a control hero, Jarl's primary objective is to slow down his opponents and neutralize their win conditions. He destroys armor with cards like Mangle and Crumble to Eternity, freezes turns with Frostbites, and closes out games with evasion in the form of Tear Asunder and Fused Oakenhold. Jarl prefers games around 12 turns, giving him time to wear down his opponent's armor and start applying Frostbites. While this matchup between an unstoppable force and an unmovable object rarely ever goes exactly 6 or 12 turns, it often ends somewhere in between. Whoever can control the game's tempo is most likely to win. In other words, Syndra is favored if she's able to speed up the game so it ends before turn 9, while Jarl becomes more favored if he can make the game go longer. Most of the time, Jarl tries to steal tempo from Syndra by blocking out Mask of Momentum's on-hit effect, destroying Flick Knives with Mangle, and slowing down her even more with Stalagmite and Channel Lake Frigid. Meanwhile, Syndra tries to counter Jarl's Frostbites by keeping her armor intact and increasing her blue count. This also allows her to overcome Frostbites and swing her daggers more often when threatened by Jarl's Fatigue strategy. When threatened with Channel Lake Frigid, Syndra bides her time, using it as an opportunity to arsenal, sculpting a 5-card hand that can attack wider than Jarl can defend in a single turn. As exemplified in this matchup, both heroes have adjusted their macro strategies around the concept of tempo, trying to advance their own win conditions by controlling the pace of the game. While I'll be covering tempo on a micro level next, I want to hear your thoughts on tempo. Do you agree with my macro definition of tempo, or did I miss any important points? Be sure to let me know your thoughts and questions below. In addition to responding to your comments, I'll also be releasing a podcast episode covering in-depth tempo topics for patrons over the next 2 weeks. If you want to support the work I do and get bonus articles, additional episodes, tokens, and more, I'd appreciate your support over on Patreon. On a micro scale, tempo affects a given turn cycle by disrupting your opponents to pull ahead while pushing them behind. Loss in tempo means not being able to play your cards optimally due to your opponent's moves. For instance, maybe your zero-cost boost card got put to the bottom of your deck by a plow under, making it impossible to get off the maximum velocity you've drawn this turn. While this is just one example, any situation where you or your opponent forces interaction is what tempo looks like on a micro scale. Individual tempo cards act as both threats and answers to the current board state. Even if your opponent's cards get more value on offense, on-hit disruption puts opponents in a lose-lose situation. Do they give up cards to prevent the effect, or do they take the damage and suffer the consequences? Either way, some amount of tempo is transferred as soon as the tempo card is put on the stack. For instance, take Command and Conquer, one of the most well-known tempo cards in the game. This card has been a generic staple since its release, with 3 reprints, dozens of lookalikes, and a royal hero designed around it, all within its first 5 years as a card. CNC has seen widespread competitive play since its inception, largely due to the tempo swings it provides. While 6 damage is on rate for a 2-cost attack, Command and Conquer's Arsenal Destruction makes it backbreaking when used at the right time. Because the Arsenal is often used to save power cards for a future turn, Command and Conquer's question becomes even tougher. Do they want to commit equipment and cards from hand to try to save their arsenal, or do they take damage and give it up? To make matters worse, CNC also prevents defense reactions from being played on its chain link while targeting the zone where D-reacts are often saved. And don't even get me started on this card's synergy with Fyendal Spring Tunic and Pummel. Most of the time, the defending player is left with fewer cards, while the attacker gets to continue leveraging the tempo gained on the following turn. Tempo isn't just limited to negative effects though. While Command and Conquer is a tempo card that decelerates the opposing player's pace, there are also tempo cards which can accelerate a hero's game plan if not answered correctly. Take Snatch for instance. Given how powerful card draw is in Flesh and Blood, Snatch often incentivizes players to fully block it out. In red, this attack often requires 2 cards, a defense reaction, or at least equipment blocks to stop. Typically used in rushdown decks, Snatch is often used at the end of a turn to help the aggressor gain tempo, getting their opponent's life closer to 0 while drawing an arsenal for the impending 5-card turn. Now that we've talked about both accelerating and decelerating tempo cards, it's important to note that either category can affect any and all tenets of Flesh and Blood to slow down an opponent's game plan. To demonstrate this, we'll play a round of Snatch or CNC. In this game, I'll show you a pair of tempo cards for each of the core tenets of Flesh and Blood. You'll have a few seconds to identify which card is tempo accelerating, or Snatch, and which one is a CNC, or tempo decelerating. Ready? For action points, we have Stormstriders and Red in the Ledger. For resources, we have Channel Lake Frigid and Rising Resentment. For intellect, Channel Lightning Valley and Pulsewave Harpoon. For life, we have Toxicity and Lumina Ascension. For power, we have Bittering Thorns and Pulverize. For defense, we have Valiant Dynamo and Spider's Bite. And for abilities, we have Smashing Performance and Prism's Heralds. Many of these cards have been staples since release, showing how powerful tempo tools are in Flesh and Blood. While these cards all impact the pace of the game in one way or another, I hope that these examples clarify how tempo cards can accelerate your own game plan or decelerate your opponent's. However, if you have any questions about whether specific cards are tempo accelerating or tempo decelerating, be sure to let me know in the comments. By this point, we've covered a lot, including the definition of tempo and showing it on both a macro and micro level. We've also seen how omnipresent tempo tools are in Flesh and Blood. While most classes have access to thematic tempo tools like Illusionist's Phantasm Attacks, Wizard's Surge Effects, and Brute's Item Destruction, there are 3 classes that I believe embody the tempo playstyle more than any other. While slower than Rushdown heroes, tempo heroes have plenty of tools to slow down even the fastest decks, disrupting them long enough until they're able to pull ahead over the course of the game. These heroes' win conditions rely on stealing tempo from opponents, while also closing out games with evasive damage. Now that we've laid the groundwork for what constitutes tempo heroes, we'll finally unveil Flesh and Blood's 3 tempo classes. In this section, we'll cover how, you guessed it, Guardians, Rangers, and Assassins play a tempo-oriented game plan. Let's start out with Guardians, the tempo class first introduced in Welcome to Wraith. Out of the 3 tempo classes, Guardians are the most defensive. They have the biggest defense reactions in the game, and most Guardian actions, and even some instants, block for 3. They're often seen wielding a shield and a suit of shining armor. The best Guardians preserve equipment for the perfect pivot turn to steal tempo from their opponents. By blocking with equipment, they're able to keep their hand to send tall attacks with even more devastating on-hits in return. As a Guardian, it's important to know when to block out and when to send disruption at your opponent. Guardian's main disruption comes in the form of crush attacks, applying a variety of disruption whenever 4 or more damage is dealt. While crush attacks cost at least 3 resources, they present a minimum of 5 damage, meaning that the opponent must block with armor or defend with at least 1 card to prevent even the smallest crush attack's on-hit effect. Crush attacks fit our definition of tempo perfectly, requiring opponents to block and slow down, all the while progressing the Guardian hero's game plan. Spinal Crush is a great example of a tempo tool, putting opponents in a lose-lose situation like Command & Conquer. Spinal Crush deals a massive 9 damage and threatens to completely steal tempo from go-wide decks if not answered. Preventing Spinal Crush's on-hit effect often requires giving up at least 2 cards from hand, reducing the effectiveness of go-wide strategies no matter how they choose to respond. In addition to Spinal Crush, Guardians have a toolbox of crush effects to target the heroes and classes at the top of the current meta. Even though crush attacks have to deal at least 4 damage to apply disruption, Dominate and Overpower help enable Guardian crush effects. Bravo, Valda, and Betsy all have evasion built into their hero abilities as a core part of their identity. When evasion is applied to their specializations, they're able to deal a surprising amount of unpreventable damage and disruption, stealing a huge amount of tempo from their opponents. Once the life totals are low, defense reactions have been used up, and armor blocks have been exhausted, Tear Asunder, Buckle, and Macho Grande allow Guardians to close out the game. Overall, Guardians are phenomenal pickups for players who like heroes who can tank hits while also disrupting opponents. Rangers, introduced in Arcane Rising one set later, may not be as defensive as Guardians, but they play with the motto that the best defense is a strong offense. Even though arrow attacks have to be played from Arsenal with a bow equipped, they make up for it with devastating disruption. Unlike crush attacks, arrows only have to deal a single point of damage to steal tempo from opponents. Like Guardians, Rangers have access to a toolbox, or a quiver of arrows that disrupt nearly all aspects of Fab's fundamentals. Rangers often make it difficult for opponents to block their on-hit effects by going tall with one large arrow but with multiple Ranger pumps. When adding multiple pumps to a single arrow, Rangers can threaten 10 damage and 3 to 4 different on-hit effects on a single attack. Go tall strategies aim to dominate or overpower their attacks to make sure that the most important arrows hit their target. No matter which Ranger you play, the class has access to a variety of bows and equipment to provide offensive utility to keep opponents at a distance. Outside of their offensive arrows, traps are phenomenal defensive tempo tools at Rangers' disposal. For instance, Boulder Trap shreds opponents' armor when it defends a buffed attack. Riptide is a great example of a Ranger who utilizes traps and arrows to steal tempo on both halves of the turn cycle. He deals bonus damage every time his traps are activated, sometimes dealing lethal damage on his opponent's turn. His specialization, Collapsing Trap, is one of the most powerful defensive tempo tools, shredding the attacking hero's carefully crafted hand on a go-wide turn. Like Guardians, Rangers excel at keeping their opponents on the back foot once they've taken control of the tempo, as long as they can continue to draw the right combination of pumps, arrows, and traps. Before we can move on and talk about assassins, we need to talk about Codex of Frailty. It wouldn't be a tempo video without talking about this powerhouse of a card. When played with an empty hand, Codex of Frailty allows the tempo hero to recycle their best, most disruptive attack at Arsenal, makes the opponent discard a card, increasing the odds that the attack will hit, gives the opposing hero a Frailty token, reducing their upcoming offensive turn, and enables the tempo hero to replenish their arsenal with the Ponder token. If it wasn't clear already, Codex of Frailty empowers massive tempo swings for both Rangers and Assassin, earning its spot as the second ever Majestic reprinted in an expansion slot. As a tempo card overall, it simultaneously acts as both a Snatch and CNC. We saved the best for last today, as Assassins epitomize the tempo playstyle. Between daggers, attack reactions, stealth attacks, and contracts, Assassins have plenty of tools to disrupt their opponents. While Assassins don't have the same breadth of disruption as Guardians or Rangers, they have deep hand, deck, and arsenal disruption like no other. Assassins have dozens of stealth attacks and a dozen more contracts that banish cards from these zones. While the base power of these attacks is lower than those from Guardians, their on-hit effects are just as potent as Ranger arrows, needing to deal a single point of damage to disrupt. Because they're so good at disrupting the hand and arsenal, Assassins fare extremely well into heroes who want to keep 4 and 5 card hands. For example, Bloodrush Bellows, Maximum Velocity, and Wrath of Retribution become far less potent when continuously disrupted. On top of attack actions, dagger swings ask tough questions for opponents that often present just a single point of damage. Piercing prevents them from being easily covered by equipment, chipping away at opponents' life totals while empowering future attacks on the combat chain. Even if daggers are fully blocked out, attack reactions like Shred and Tarantula Toxin can nullify blocking cards already committed to defense. These and other attack reactions are fundamental to the assassin identity. While Guardians and Rangers have to rely on Dominate and Overpower to close out games, attack reactions are much more flexible tools for assassins. For instance, if the defender overcommits blocks above the assassin's range, they can simply decide to arsenal an extra reaction for later. In a similar vein, they can psych out opponents with hidden information, feigning a handful of attack reactions instead of 2 stealth attacks, Yellow Shred, and an Enlightened Strike. Between dagger pings and attack reactions, assassins have efficient ways to close out games once they get their opponents to single-digit life totals. Therefore, defending with equipment early to preserve life totals and stop relevant on-hits can be crucial against them. However, the responsiveness of attack reactions allows them to deal just enough damage to go over the top on the attacks that matter most. As a whole, assassin cards perform better combined than the sum of their individual parts. For example, think of Bonds of Agony combined with Flick Knives, Just a Nick, and Concealed Blade, or Kiss of Death spiked with Blood Rot, followed by Pain in the Backside and Flick Knives and Slippy. With large hands, assassins can combine their cards in ways that can catch even experienced players off guard. Even though they have fewer options on 1 to 2 card hands, they still have tempo-threatening combos like Azuri's Isolate and Shakedown combo, new with Bonds of Agony and Just a Nick, alongside Tunic on 3, Arousing Wave, and Fang Strike, but especially literally any assassin threatening Leave No Witnesses with Codex of Frailty. As a tempo class, assassins are extremely consistent at slowing down their opponent's win condition. They present consistent disruption and good damage that are backed up by a high level of synergy and reactivity. Now that we've seen how tempo applies to Guardian, Ranger, and Assassin, it's time to discuss the most important part of the video: how you can utilize tempo to improve as a Flesh and Blood player. I've intentionally saved this part for the end of the video because applying the details covered earlier will help you steal tempo from your opponents. Tempo is all about interacting with what your opponent wants to do. Therefore, learning each hero's ability, their power cards, and overall game plan is crucial. By covering how Guardians, Rangers, and Assassins interact with the core tenets of Flesh and Blood, I've secretly given you the first piece of knowledge you need to take back the tempo when playing against them. For instance, if you know how Valda builds up seismic surges to dominate her specialization as well as other crush attacks, you're already halfway towards figuring out how to play against her tempo threats. By learning what each hero does, you'll know which cards you should sideboard in and which cards you should absolutely take out. You'll have a good feel for how fast or slow you should play in order to pressure her the most. You'll know what to do, but more importantly, what not to do, realizing win percentage gains in each matchup. I hope you've enjoyed this torrent of tempo information. Most importantly, I hope that today's topic has improved your understanding of tempo in Flesh and Blood. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and consider supporting the channel as a patron over on Patreon for articles, podcast episodes, and additional perks. That's all for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll teach you in the next one.